Game week 11 proved to be my best game week of the season where I halved my rank, and now going into game week 12, the big decision is Bruno Fernandes essential and can we avoid Saka now that a cheaper alternative is available? Welcome to today's game week 12 transfer plans video. As always, if you look forward to it, make sure you drop a like and smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So as I mentioned, game week 11 was one for the history books this season, 78 points and halved my overall rank from 1.1 million to 490k. We are finally in the top 1 million. It feels like an absolute age, but we're there now, and hopefully we are going to stay on our way to 100k. Now, in terms of the team, 78 points is fantastic, but I cannot lie to you, I'm a little bit bitter. It feels like there could have been so much more. I feel like I left so much on the table, but let's quickly go through it right now. So, Sells with a 2-pointer. I had this debate on the Saturday morning stream between Fabianski and Sells. I felt like Sells was just the better defence, and at half-time in that game with Forest being 1-0 up, I was licking my lips thinking that I made the right choice. But of course, Fabianski's 9-pointer randomly getting another bonus in the final calculation of the bonus points meant that I really did make the wrong decision. And on reflection, with the way that Everton have been so blunt going forward, Fabianski probably was the logical pick, but Sells nonetheless the 2-pointer. Now, moving into the defence, this is where, honestly, I am so bitter about this game week. So, Aït-Nouri with a 6-pointer, more than happy with that. I'm going to be honest, going into this game week, he was the one who I didn't think would pick up the clean sheet. But this is where the problems happened. Dalot with the 1-pointer, coming off in the 57th minute. All I needed was 3 more minutes, maybe 2.5, and we would have banked that clean sheet. Dalot literally has not come off early in any game, and for that to happen in this one game week was a killer. This game week could have definitely been 90 plus points. It is what it is, but I was a little bit bitter about that. And Trent's injury again, compounded with the fact that Liverpool kept a clean sheet. That in itself, add 5 points on for Dalot, another 5 points for Trent, and we're getting ourselves into nosebleed territory, probably around 200k overall rank. But again, I can't complain with the game week, even though I am right now. In terms of the midfielders, when we're the 5-pointer, it is what it is. Everybody owns him, and he is a long-term pick in our teams. Cole Palmer with the 2-pointer. I watched the game. I felt like he still wasn't completely match fit. It felt like they were almost playing him slightly with an injury. But again, with these long-term fixtures of Chelsea, no complaints right now with Cole Palmer. Garnacho with the 6-pointer. Now, he already is a problem in the team, but coming off the bench, scoring that worldie was just the icing on the cake for this game week. And maybe a transfer out my team. I will talk about that later. Now, the big decision this game week, of course, was captaincy. I had it on Son all week, but then spoke about how on my stream, I just felt like having the captaincy or Salah and then just having whatever points we get from Son is a much better situation than putting the captaincy or Son, really being aggressive, knowing that any point Salah scores, I don't benefit from. So I was really happy to go down probably the safe and more boring route, but it paid off in the end. But again, I can't knock anybody that went for Son with a captaincy. I don't think any of us saw that result coming with Ipswich winning 2-1. But the big winners of the game week were my cheap forwards. Raul sitting on the bench with 5 points. And a lot of people are asking me why I didn't start him. And this is why. Cunha with a 12-pointer and Visser with the 13-pointer. That really was the main reason why this team got the green arrow. And Cunha, always an FPL swing in this game. Cunha with the 12-pointer, Strand Larsen goes off with an injury. We never get both players doing really well in this game, unfortunately. But I'm really happy to have Cunha long term. And Visser was brought in as part of a rotation to basically play the home games, because Brentford and Visser are Jekyll and Hyde. Amazing at home, pretty woeful away. And that is why Visser in this game is fantastic. And he also will be great in a couple of weeks' time at home against Leicester. So, to conclude, 78 points, a huge green arrow, really happy with the game week. But as I mentioned, I am still a little bit bitter that we couldn't get 3 more minutes from Dalot and that Trent injury. But time to preview game week 12 and what exactly to do with this team, because of course Trent is a problem and also Son may be a bit of a problem. So taking a look ahead to game week 12, what I want to do right now is just show you what the team looks like without any transfers made, and then we'll go down the route of exactly the plans that I have in place First and foremost, it's worth noting is the international break. We now have 2 weeks until game week 12. So if you're sat there right now planning on making transfers, I really would hold off. I know some players have already been withdrawn from the England squad. I believe Rice and Saka have done so. But again, we don't actually know if there is any sort of severity with the injuries. So if you're planning early transfers, just remember you are taking a big risk with those players going away on international duty. Anything can happen, so you are obviously taking that risk. But in terms of my team right now, I would say the starting 11 kind of picks itself. We do have this on the bench right now away against Everton, but as I mentioned, I don't really rate Brentford away from home in compared to being at home. I think the big problem with my team right now, goalkeeper, both are terrible, but I do fancy Arsenal to get back on track with their goal scoring, hence why Fabianski is in goal, and we just hope that maybe West Ham can accumulate some saves in that game at St James's Park. In terms of the defence, Anderson, not ideal at home against Fulham, Wolves, but I prefer playing him over Aït-Nouri. Dalot, we're hoping we'll get something more from him under Amorim, and Trent obviously currently being yellow flagged. The midfield, I think, looks fantastic, and I don't think Son is actually a bad pick for this game week with Man City being so poor in transitional moments. I do think Son could actually do really well against him. But we also need to remember that 9.9 million for a player, I need to be confident in the selection there, and I don't know whether I am with Son as a long-term capacity. In terms of the forwards, Cunha and Raul, playing against one another is not ideal, but I still back both of those as an FPL option. So you can see game week 12 is not ideal. We are missing some teams, and we're going to touch on those fixtures that we need to prioritise in a minute. But in terms of players that do need to leave the team potentially, Trent originally was always going to be a hold. But if he is confirmed to be out for game week 12, the fixtures beyond that are not amazing for Liverpool defenders. And with him being such an expensive price, it would make a lot of sense for me to sell Trent and allow to use the cash to go elsewhere. And Son is also a transfer out, potentially on how we view that fixture. And the other one is going to be Garnacho. I think he could emerge as an amazing option under Amorim, but we also need to assess whether actually just going for the talisman in that team in Bruno Fernandes is the way to go. So there will definitely be transfers made with 2 free transfers available. Let's take a look at the teams we need to target. So here we have the teams that I think we need to target between game week 12 and game week 17. I apologise for anyone who's a fan of teams like Southampton and all. I've excluded them from this list because I am not buying players from those clubs. So we've mainly got the teams that are either a priority buy or at least ones that have a bit of a downturn in their fixtures, but are obviously teams that we're always going to consider assets from. So right now, just working top to bottom, Wolves are currently the top of the ticker, but with me already having Aït-Nouri and Cunha, I'm not looking to bring in any more Wolves assets. But if you are looking to bring in teams, I think Wolves are a good investment if you don't have it already. Chelsea, second best on the ticker. I do think there are really good games. European football doesn't impact them because, of course, they have basically an A and a B team. I already have the best option in Cole Palmer, and I just don't think Chelsea defensively are worth investing in. So the only player that I think is a consideration is going to be Nicholas Jackson. But of course, and you can see below that, Newcastle's fixtures starting to turn good again, and no European football, I actually think Alexander Isak is my preference over someone like a Nicholas Jackson. However, it is worth noting, of course, the price difference between the two. But if I was buying new right now, I actually think I prefer Alexander Isak as opposed to Nicholas Jackson. And Lewis Hall is also a great consideration at a Newcastle team at a cheaper price. Coming into game week 12, I don't think the entry point is there for Brighton. I think the Bournemouth game is always tricky, but if you want to go there, you can. Game week 13 onwards, I think, is where Brighton need to be bought. And I think there are some great options available. João Pedro at 5.4 million as a forward is unbelievable value. I think the defenders are always decent value. And if you want to go into the midfielders, people like Matoma can be a consideration. But for me, it's João Pedro, Welbeck, and potentially someone like a Dunk on radar. Outside of those teams, Semenyo at Bournemouth is the only one that I'm considering as a downgrade in one of the midfield departments. Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins, always on radar, but with him having an early substitution once again against Liverpool, I am just conscious that he is susceptible to an early substitution in any fixture, and we have European football that they have to contend with. I already have my Fulham stack, so I'm not touching that, similar to that of Brentford. The only other consideration that I want to talk about is Arsenal. Yes, they are further down on the ticker, but sometimes we get attracted by the new shiny toys. I think sometimes investing in the teams that we know are stable under a manager that we know is actually proven is sometimes the route to go for. So even though we could be tempted by all of these teams at the top of the ticker, I still think Arsenal are the priority buy in our FPL teams. Because even though the fixtures are a little bit mixed, I just back them in pretty much all of these games. Forest, West Ham, Man United, very indifferent against Amorim, Fulham, Everton. I just think we're going to see some consistency from Arsenal now that they have all of their players back from injury, barring people like Calaflori. And I do think getting some Arsenal on my team is going to be the priority. I have my Liverpool assets. I don't want to go any more there. Spurs, there is no confidence in those fixtures to invest. And Man United, me being a Dalot owner and Garnacho, the only way I would look to buy more Man United is by going for probably the best option in Bruno Fernandes. But we know we're taking a risk with a new manager in charge. And finally, Man City. Now, controversially, I actually think if I was building a team right now, I wouldn't do it because it's very difficult to structure, but I think Haaland's going to be back on the menu very, very soon. I think Spurs is a great fixture. I think Forest is actually a decent fixture. And I think Haaland is going to start ticking over in the foreseeable future. And he is going to be the massive one that kind of changes the template once again. But sitting here right now with my own team, I can't be buying Haaland right now. It would be lunacy. So based on this, Arsenal are a priority buy. I think Bruno is absolutely consideration, and also Alexander Isak in those teams. Let's take a look at my transfer plans for game week 12. So take a look at my game week 12 transfer plans. Usually I will have a pre-made graphic here with my team and my transfer plans, but I really do think there are 3 different directions that this team can go, and it kind of shows what a brilliant season this year is because there are so many fantastic options available that we can go off in any different direction. So hence why I have brought up the FPL planner here, just to go into those 3 different scenarios and be really interested to know in the comment section which direction you prefer. And as I mentioned, it's all going to come down to the fitness status of Trent Alexander-Arnold, because if he's ruled out at 7 million, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to keep a player like him with these fixtures coming up. I think the Southampton game is the money fixture. After that, I could see goals conceded by Liverpool, even though they've been so fantastic defensively. So this first draft that I'm going to build is what I'm going to call the safe and smart route. And this is going to be a long-term plan. So Trent out for Gabriel if we do get the confirmation that he is going to be ruled out, because long term I do think that Arsenal are just a really sound investment, and Gabriel is just the man who I know offers the threat from set pieces and importantly the clean sheet potential. And when you look at those fixtures long term, I think we do just need to play that long term game with these sorts of players. So Gabriel would be the obvious pick in that team now that he's come down to 6.1 million. And then if I do think that the Son game against Man City isn't worth keeping him, and Saka is past fit because of course he did go off with that injury, then I would bring in Bukayo Saka. And with 1.3 million in the bank, I think the team just looks good for the long term. It has the Arsenal assets in. Yes, it doesn't have Trent, but I don't think he is paying the way right now at 7 million. And then I have 1.3 million to invest elsewhere in this squad if it does require it. So I think this team looks pretty solid for the long term. But there are different directions that this team can go. So the second option that I need to show you in draft number 2, again, keeping the team as the default team. If Trent is actually past fit, I think game week 12 is a brilliant fixture away against Southampton. And I don't think bringing in an Arsenal defender is absolutely imperative for game week 12. So for that reason, 1 or 2 moves that I could do, and this is going to be a slightly controversial take, getting rid of Garnacho. Now, under Amorim, he could become one of the best value players in the game. But if I don't want to take that risk, bringing in Bruno Fernandes before those price rises actually would be quite a tempting thing to do. So bringing in Bruno Fernandes, knowing that he is just going to be my main man in that Man United team. Then the other move, and this is where it might be a bit controversial, is selling Son. And I don't have the money available to bring in Bukayo Saka. But what I do have available is to bring in a certain Martin Odegaard. Now, I don't think Odegaard is actually that bad of an alternative to Saka. I think that he is going to be as creative as Bukayo Saka, because Saka's mainly been getting his points from creativity as opposed to scoring goals. And we know Odegaard's minutes have always been Mr. Consistent. Sometimes comes off as the game is dead, but really he is going to be Arteta's main man in this title charge at the back end on the second half of this season. And I do actually think Odegaard poses a brilliant alternative to Bukayo Saka. And then, looking at this team, obviously long term, I have the best Man United asset, I think, even if Amorim does come in and slightly change Bruno's position. I've got Odegaard, who at nearly 2 million cheaper actually does pose a brilliant alternative. And it allows me to keep this structure in the team. Then what it will allow me to do in the following game week is get rid of Trent when the fixtures turn bad and bring in an Arsenal defender in game week 13. I might not have the best Arsenal midfielder, but I think Odegaard could actually come close to the returns of Bukayo Saka. So that is the route there if we get the news that Trent is available. I think this is a really aggressive move, but I actually think it is really high upside. Now finally, the real rogue move, if we do want to go there, is avoiding Arsenal. And this is why this season is so interesting. What we can do, because of course we don't actually have any Arsenal in this team, is go a bit different. Newcastle come into some great fixtures. If I'm of the opinion that Newcastle are now the team to buy, what we can do is downgrade Trent all the way to Lewis Hall if we get confirmation that Trent is out, and then look to change the structure of this team by getting rid of someone like a Raul Jimenez, who fixtures are starting to turn a little bit sour, and bring in someone like an Alexander Isak in the team. And all of a sudden, the team looks a completely different beast to the other ones that I have built. And this is why this season is so interesting, because one route I can go down all Arsenal. The next one I can go for slightly different differentials. And this route, I just go all in on Newcastle. And with the fixtures coming up for Newcastle and the way that Isak's being a bit of a talisman, I think we could see some fantastic returns from Isak over this period. But the big question is, if I go for Alexander Isak, I'm then really struggling to get myself some Arsenal assets in game week 12 in particular. It means I'll keep people like Son, I'll keep people like Garnacho, but I will also argue that this team looks really, really strong. So as you can see, we have a lot to debate right now over the international break. I think draft number one is the sensible, smart move in terms of long term. I've got the best Arsenal defender, I've got the best Arsenal midfielder, but I do have slight concerns with people like Garnacho. Draft number two, I would say, is a bit more the vibes pick. But if Trent is available, Trent plus Odegaard plus Bruno Fernandes, I personally feel is actually a little bit more exciting than Gabriel, Saka and Garnacho. I think I get the best of both worlds of all of those teams. And finally, draft number three very much is a rogue pick, going in on Newcastle, but then avoiding Arsenal for one more game week. So let me know which one you prefer in the comments. Right now, I actually prefer the Odegaard and Bruno Fernandes move as being a little bit different. Yes guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's game week 12 transfer plans video. I will be doing another one after the first week of the international break, because of course so much can happen between now and then, but I just wanted to put my early thoughts in this video, but it'll be interesting to see how things change. Let me know in the comment section how many points did you score, and of course your early plans going into game week 12. I'll be really interested to know. If you enjoyed it, please do drop a like, and of course smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.